is for ideation. 3 months have passed since the tablet fell to Earth. I should say a lot of what you're about to hear is highly classified. It was my idea to monitor the object as it approached the surface of our planet. Even from afar it was intriguing, plummeting through the atmosphere at an incredibly sharp angle of decline, yet showing no outward change in mass. Even our most basic instruments told us this was something different, something more than a conventional chunk of aberrant space debris. It was also my idea to survey the crash site, a smoldering crater roughly 300 meters in diameter, blasted deep into the Mojave. After a short flight, followed by a few hours of driving, we found ourselves one of the first few research teams to arrive at the scene, and certainly the only group willing to descend into the crater, to examine the meteorite up close. The air was still thick with dust as we made our way down the steep slope and towards the marbled blue rock at the bottom. We discovered a remarkable object, unspeakably durable and seemingly undamaged by an impact which had shattered the earth around it. The rock was a large half-sphere, its round edge rough and pockmarked, likened by one of the team to fresh scoria. Conversely, the flat side was impossibly smooth, a level, shiny slab of ultramarine, its perfect surface only marred by an intricate set of markings. It took a mere glance to understand what we were looking at, yet much longer for our minds to comprehend. The cuts in the face of the rock were too sophisticated to have been caused by erosion, or the random impacts of lesser debris. Their structure, their complexity, and the occasional instance of symbolic repetition all compounded to suggest a much more significant cause, the first evidence of something we had been scouring the universe for since time immemorial. Intention and intelligence. The government set up a perimeter and threw a ring-bound NDA at anyone within a mile of the site. The only reason we didn't get our marching orders was due to the expertise we demonstrated early on, before the rest of the scientific attaché showed up. My greatest idea was the proposal I brought before the team a few days later, on the subject of what these cryptic markings might represent. I had noticed that a few of the scrawlings, located at the lower left of the rock's face, were accompanied by a series of sequential dots, with each set increasing incrementally by 1. My team theorized that these dots, and by extension the symbols adjacent to them, constituted numbers. From there, the theory was jumped on quickly. Just 5 days after the strange tablet struck the ground, the scientific community realized what they were looking at. An intergalactic Rosetta Stone, which equated an unknown alien language to the universal tongue of logic and mathematics. From that point, the task of translating the mysterious etchings rapidly evolved into a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week effort. The rest of the scrawlings followed a logical progression, sprawling out from the simplest of calculations, eventually spiraling into a dynamic lexicon which we worked painstakingly to comprehend. The language was efficient, but descriptive, combining qualitative and quantitative statements in a way no human tongue ever had. Roughly a month on from our discovery, we finally understood what the tablet was trying to say. It was telling us a story. The story of a species, buried deep in the past and deeper still in the most distant realms of the cosmos. A formless creature, nestled within the vast electrical storms of an impossible nebula. The tablet outlined how every strike of lightning, every interaction between every particle within the gaseous titan served, to put it crudely, like the synapses and neurotransmissions of a vast mindscape. An ecosystem of ideation, suspended in the vast blackness of space. The species that evolved in this mystifying environment, did not. The species that evolved in this mystifying environment, did not inhabit the physical world as we perceived it. They existed as an abstract of themselves, as the concept of their own being. In a slightly less accurate, but vastly more straightforward sense, they were a species of sentient ideas. It was one paranoid scientist who suggested the creature might propagate itself in the same way as other ideas. Through translation and comprehension, by the time we realized she was right, realized the trick that had been played upon us, it was too late. It was a few weeks after that unsettling realization, that the symptoms of ideation started to take effect. It began with the vaguest inkling that something was there, hiding in a worried thought, in an idle memory, in a daydream. Existing infinitesimally at the very edge of the frame. As soon as it arrived the creature would suddenly be gone, disappearing for days on end, until you would encounter it once more, in another corner of your mind. Every time you'd see it, it would be larger. Every time you'd notice it, when you think back to your 10th birthday and find it gestating in the background of a treasured recollection, it would scuttle away to grow somewhere else. It quickly becomes apparent that there's nothing you can do. No harmful notions will hurt it, no thoughts of fire will burn it out of you. In fact, thinking about it only makes it worse. The only scientists who truly rid themselves of it are those who vacated their brain matter across the walls of their homes. They were the brave ones. Unfortunately, I'm not one of them. 3 months have passed since the meteor fell to Earth. The idea that was imparted to us is now engorged and mature. I can't conjure a thought without some part of it lying across the scene. Its very presence leaks a subtle influence, until I can no longer extricate its will from my own. Until I can't divine where my thoughts end, and it begins. The creature isn't evil, it has no malevolent intent. It simply desires what every living organism seeks. Survival through propagation. I can't tell which ideas are mine anymore. In fact, I'm not sure why I've written this story. Story 2, A Day Off in Hell. Hell is a room with 2 doors. The first shuts behind you as you step inside. It locks into the frame, never to open again. The second door stands at the opposite wall, a solid, implacable barrier, its purpose utterly inscrutable. As soon as both doors are closed, your torment commences. The room houses a single unique punishment, dealt out at the deft, sadistic hands of your custodian. You will scream, you will cry, and as you watch your wounds heal just enough to keep the pain fresh, there will be nothing you'll want more than escape. Once you have endured 24 hours of punishment, you are permitted a day off. The second door will swing open, revealing a bare, soft-lit room. Anytime you wish, you can pick yourself up and shuffle, unimpeded, through the doorway into the gray stone room. The space is featureless except, as always, for 2 doors. As the door shuts behind you, your wounds will heal, your pain will subside, and for 24 hours, nothing will happen. There are no special comforts, but in the quiet absence of ceaseless torment you drink every second like ambrosia. Here's the thing, however. When your time is up, when the second door opens, and you are pulled inside, you will be in a new room, with a new tormentor, and, importantly, your new punishment will be noticeably worse. Some take a while to notice the pattern. Some notice immediately, but just can't take the pain. They dash through the door as soon as it opens, eager for a day of peace. Those people have it the worst. They descend quickly beyond the realms of imaginable suffering, and their yearning for release will only make those 24 hours more inadequate. All of them will start to think of their earlier punishments almost fondly, lamenting that they ever set foot in the gray room, but unable to stop. But the real trick is played on those who learn restraint. Those who realize the bone-rending torment they're undergoing is better than anything beyond the gray room. Their heart breaks 1,000 times, every moment they decide not to step into that next room. Their soul shatters the moment they decide they're going to stay in that room. Hell is a room with 2 doors. The first shuts behind you as you step inside. It locks into the frame, never to open again. The second door stands at the opposite wall, open and waiting. Reminding you, with every agonizing second, that this is a hell you chose. Story 3, 9342 dolls. Detective Hassan, veteran officer of the esteemed Metropolitan Police Force, smiled at the small plastic baby on his desk. His working day was long done, his bag packed. Yet, as those around him left the poorly heated office for their marginally better heated homes, Hassan stayed behind, examining the unassuming plastic doll. The thing was in poor condition, worn by time with dark smudges across its face. Nothing anyone would consider special. However, to Detective Hassan, incomparable sentimentalist that he was, the grubby doll shone with novel significance. You are not supposed to keep mementos from cases, regardless of how bizarre and interesting they were, but this was the one impropriety that Hassan allowed himself. Meredith in evidence, who liked Hassan enough to indulge his vices, had picked the doll at random from some boxes holding almost 10,000. Boxes labeled with the name, Lindsay Roscoe. Lindsay was a salon assistant, committed to a mental institution after biting off a stranger's fingers. She'd fled the scene and a young detective Hassan had been dispatched to the girl's registered address. That was where he found them. 9,324 plastic dolls spanning every crevice of a filthy bed sit. Not long after they were collected, it became clear that each doll contained human hair. The girl swept up in the salon, and apparently used the cuttings to fashion makeshift voodoo dolls. Hassan smiled to himself, remembering how disturbed it had made him. Then a playful, sideways thought entered his mind. There was a simple way to test whether they worked. Slowly, with the dumbest of grins upon his face, Hassan walked the doll over to his mobile, and mock-dialed his office phone. He stopped smiling when his desk phone rang. Hassan stared at the receiver for what seemed like an age. It was a coincidence, he knew that, but there was something chilling about the timing, and how the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Hassan's hand shot out and snatched the receiver to his ear. Hello. Please. A woman's crying voice answered. How are you doing this? Hassan threw the phone onto the desk and stood up. After a breathless, still moment, he burst from his office and ran down the corridor. Scarcely a minute later he erupted, panting into the small dark room at the back of evidence, pleading with Meredith to let him see the rest of the dolls. You see, Detective Hassan was a sensible collector. He'd never take something unless the case was closed, and Meredith would never pass him a memento unless the evidence was no longer needed. I'm sorry, you're too late, said Meredith as she stood aside and walked back into evidence. Hassan stood immobile, his eyes wide, his pupils pin-like in the light of the incinerator. Subscribe and please like. Thanks for tuning in and listening.